I have our cold open topic,
Okay, okay.
which is I think I think that I, as an adult, should be not like socially told not to do the following thing, which is to go to the store and buy a dog toy for myself and just squeak it and like be like, man, this is soft. I really like this. Like
No, I
and
think
have
Joe, you've
a
unlocked
stuffed
the
animal basically that
fucking
also has a squeaker.
secret of adulthood, which is that you can go out and buy anything. Like, you know, when you're kids, you're like, oh, adults
I
can go
mean,
out and
that's
buy
also
anything.
fair.
And then it's true, and you become an adult and you go out and you buy everything.
I,
I'm just saying,
you
I don't
might
think
be
there's
right, but
anything to
like,
be ashamed of.
so this, I'm saying this because my so my parents went out today and got their first part of the COVID vaccine
Oh, nice.
because my parents are both first responders, so they can actually like get that. Um, and so they also had to like pick up some stuff from shopping, and it was like it wasn't Instacart, but they were also like very safe with masks and everything. And they saw a dog toy. They actually saw it. They brought two dog toys back home for Dusty, which for listeners is my Yorkie. And one was like a stuffed dog that has a squeaker in it. That I was like, "Oh, you got this for me," and they're like, "No, idiot, this is for the dog." And I'm like, I'm fighting him for this one." And then the other was a goose, but the squeaker for it is not a generic squeaker. Like it makes goose sounds.
So, describe the one that you got for yourself.
I did not get one for myself, but I might. It's like a the one I'm thinking of is like it's.
The one on your wish list. The dog toy
I'm
on
trying to
Joe's
think
wish
of like
list.
yeah, the one that's in the one in my Amazon wish list.
Uh,
It is, you know, like how big around CD cases are.
yes. Sorry,
What the
I had a
hell
massive
happened?
burp and I was
Finn, where
muting
have you
myself.
gone?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I was 100% dissociating in that second because I was like, oh my god, Finn has been killed.
No, no, no. I was
Um,
burping for a
it's
long
kind of
time.
like
I finally figured out that
about
we
as
can
big as a.
not put that in the podcast.
um, so it's roughly the dimensions of a CD case, like, in that it's about as tall and as wide, but it's like about half the volume just because of the way it's shaped and like it's fluffy and movable, and it's kind of got like a calico coloring to it.
Uh-huh.
But then again, I've never been one to like definitively know what the color is of something. Um,
Well, I've been
but yeah,
playing.
it's just like it's like the generic. Oh, you know the oh, what is it? Do you know the Tumblr post that's like you can tell if someone was a furry based on how they draw dogs?
I do know this.
So the non-furry dog is like what it looks like, the plush.
Oh, I see, I see. So it's a dog toy of a dog.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. I've been playing with this thing that looks like a dog
Yeah.
toy. It's a plastic like phone holder for like if you're watching YouTube while eating, you can like it'll like put your phone up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been like squeezing it and pulling it and flipping it around, and it's a great time over here at my desk.
See, that's one of the things is like people who buy me fidget toys, like I appreciate you and I'm really thankful that you think of me and that I like things to fidget with. But nothing will be as good to fidget with as something that was exclusively not designed for that purpose.
Uh huh. Well, something
Like,
else I got
I,
is this.
if you hand me,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm going ahead. This is what do I
Then
say?
I'm gonna reach through this.
One of the stocking stuffers I got was one of those like cube things that opens up and then opens up again and then opens up again and then opens up again, so forth. That thing is an incredible time.
That's true. Oh, did I tell you what my this cold open has gone on for a bit, so this will be the last point.
Well, eventually our podcast will just become the cold open, and the podcast will get shorter and shorter after the cold open, and then the like theme song will be the ending theme. That's the goal.
God, I hope so. So I don't want to talk about everything I got for Christmas. But I did get two things that were odd enough that I think they bear mentioning.
Sure.
Actually, three things. So, one is the what are they called? The Matryoshka dolls or the nesting dolls? I don't remember what they're like actually called. I got one that was it's also a nativity scene. So, the outermost doll is Joseph. And then there's Mary, and then there is a wise man, and then there's baby Jesus.
I like that a lot.
And I opened that, and like, I was like, oh my god, this is not of this earth. It came from a far funnier dimension. Because like, I could not conceive of anyone thinking to themselves, you know what we need to do? We need to take a Russian nesting doll, but make it the fucking nativity. So I'm a big fan of it. It will be a focal point of my desk in the future. And then I got a Bob Ross bobblehead,
cool.
that I actually got my dad as well.
Like coincidentally?
And you push a button and he says, yes and no. My mom knew that we were each getting it for the other. And like kind of said like, yeah, you should definitely get it. So she got a big laugh of knowing, but like I did not go, oh, I know dad's getting me this, like, but yeah, you push a button and he like says one of his patented Bob Ross sayings, which is very cool.
If I were faster, I would say something that sounds like Bob Ross, but is also like sexual or something, and it'd be so funny and we'd laugh.
Do not deflower Bob Ross like that. So the third thing is an inflatable tube guy, like the ones outside used car lots, but for your desk.
Wait, how is it powered?
A 9-volt battery.
Does it make like a sound?
Kind of.
You gotta bring this back to school.
The fan is, of course, smaller.
And I have to...
Oh, of course.
I have to see this.
It's going on my desk.
Because if it's not too loud, I might have to buy one of those for me.
I think they're making a holiday version next year that's like a Christmas tree one.
What is yours? Is it just like a generic like blue or something?
I think it's orange, but don't quote me on that. Might be red.
All right, let's get started with this.
As a matter of fact, it could be any number of colors. Hello, and welcome to Fools and Fiction. The Fools are back. We're actually on a kind of orderly schedule-ish. Amazing what not having to be in school does for your schedule.
Indeed.
This week, the fiction is... We Can Be Heroes, I believe is, like...
You said that like the reading off of your poem kind of way.
So...
It's not a memorable title.
Can Be Heroes and Let's Be Heroes. Yeah. So, like, first off, strike one, before we've even gotten to the premise of the movie,
is that it's not called Sharkboy and Lavagirl 2.
But the movie is...
Or strike one is that it's not Sharkboy and Lavagirl 2.
I mean, that's the real strike.
That's actually a strike on all movies.
Yeah. You're right. Any movie, I'm like, all right, noted, not Sharkboy and Lavagirl 2. You're on thin ice now. That was the one bad quality of Knives Out, was that it wasn't Sharkboy and Lavagirl too.
Yeah, I had that same problem coincidentally with Parasite, which I
Uh
didn't think I'd have a problem with, but now that I'm thinking about it.
Interesting. But yeah, so We Can Be Heroes is a spiritual successor. I don't feel comfortable calling it a sequel to Sharkboy and
It's like a
Lavagirl.
spin-off, I think.
Sharkboy and Lavagirl are characters in it. Yeah, I think that's like the best one. Um, and so I think that was at the very least like how a lot of the internet got introduced to it, was that like Sharkboy and Lavagirl would be in it and they would have a kid in it. Um, and so First of all, Sharkboy does not speak because it is not Taylor Lautner. It is a different actor, and I the entire time I'm watching this. So we're watching this, Finn and I, with Chris and Cody. I think are the only two other people there,
Yeah, I think that's the
and
case.
so I like we're doing our standard issue, like making some cracks at it, and I'm constantly like, they're not gonna give him a speaking role. He's not gonna say anything. And I'm mostly right. He does grunt a bit, but not speak English.
Yeah.
And I was very sad.
I just like
Very, very white people sad.
the thing I really wanted out of this movie was for, I mean, I know I said this, but was for it to be Sharkboy and Lavagirl too, because that movie growing up, like I saw it once. Okay, so there's some like childhood movies, right? There's two categories of childhood movies that you love. One is that you've seen them 100 times, and you know every single scene, and it's like that's Labyrinth for me. Like I just absolutely love it. I grew up and I still love it. And then there's Sharkboy and Lavagirl, which I saw once when I was tiny or whenever it came out, and then immediately remembered it totally wrong as a much better movie, and had like then I had like recurrent dreams in the universe of the fictional version of Sharkboy and Lavagirl that does not exist and is much cooler. Like there was no concept about dreaming or anything in my copyrighted version of Sharkboy and Lavagirl. But anyway, what I wanted this movie to be was my like gritty, angsty, like high special effects Sharkboy and Lavagirl that I invented in my head when I was a child and had dreams about. It wasn't that, but
I think we all wanted that.
Yeah. So I wanted that, or I wanted it to be like they've all grown up and it's a like Monsters University situation or something. But I think what we got was damn pretty good.
That would also be good.
That's not an expression. Pretty damn good. That's it. I think We Can Be Heroes. Like there were a few like pacing issues I think in the middle, but other than that, like I had an absolute blast watching it. I don't remember if you
all
did
right,
or not.
So my opinions on this movie and like the enjoyability of it are mixed. Because I definitely went into, well, I think like 80% of the people watching it were people that were like, "Oh my god, Sharkboy and Lavagirl's back," and it's gonna be like the version I remember it as, rather than like the actual movie. Like you said, but like this is not the case. This movie is very much like made for kids, and I think a bit more immature than the original Sharkboy and Lavagirl.
I don't think it's more
like,
immature, because the original Sharkboy and Lavagirl had like snot humor and stuff. Like this didn't have that.
Okay, that's fair. I think Sharkboy and Lavagirl tackled it tackled heavier topics than this.
Yeah, that is
or
true.
Or at least
that
like it felt heavier. And Finn and I have both watched Sharkboy and Lavagirl at least somewhat recently, for Skiffy. And so I'm not like totally misremembering it.
No,
but I do
right.
still have my rose tinted glasses. But like, We Can Be Heroes was very much like wacky kids and their superpowers gotta save the heroes. Um, I don't. I don't want to say it felt like a Disney for kids show, like the like Blue's Clues and Paw Patrol and stuff like that. But it also did not feel like a
They
kind of
they
like
they, they didn't
adolescent
grow
or
with their
teenager
audience
movie.
for
It
sure.
felt squarely in like, yeah, which like on the one hand, very sad. On the other hand, like not terribly unexpected.
So the thing
Um
that I think held
I
this movie
so
together, or oh, sorry, if you had a point, go on ahead. Sorry, that sounded very much like
well
I thought you didn't
I
have a
was going
point, but I know you do. And now the pressure's
no
on.
um so my big thing my deviation was just like the thing I was constantly saying while watching this movie is that this script was written by children.
Yeah,
Um and that like that's not like I don't actually think that the script writers for this are children and don't know how to write a script. That's not what I mean. But I mean like if you walked up to little Timmy and you were like, what should they do now? Like where should they go next? Like what's going on? They would kind of generate this movie,
yeah.
in my opinion.
It was a
And
stream of
it
thought.
turns out I yeah, that's a good way of putting it, is that it was like very stream of conscious, like just you know, I don't I won't say this movie wasn't pre-planned, but I will say that like the spitballing got pretty heavy at points. And part of me is vindicated because big spoilers for the end of the movie. Um, the evil aliens are actually just like a society that's testing the kids' heroes, and the kids all design stuff for that alien society. And I felt big vindicated. I'm like, kids actually wrote this script. Um, so I think um, it is not like some subversive piece of art or anything like that. However, like turning the brain off, getting drunk, very enjoyable movie.
The thing that kind of catapulted it above other like similar movies to me was that even though it had the stream of consciousness kind of plot, which I don't think is a bad thing. I just think it's a certain style that can be unappealing for adults. The kind of twist was that it was planned out, and there was like foreshadowing, and there was a plot twist, and things made sense like thematically, but only that was only revealed at the end. And I think that that's kind of a cool thing to for the movie to pull off. What was that the aliens were actually good aliens, and they were testing them in these specific ways, and things were designed for the test. Like it was like easy, like an easy plot twist for sure, and like the reveal that one of the kids was actually an alien was that she accidentally drew a picture of herself as an alien, which is the dumbest thing in the world. But like the fact that there is this structure in it, I think is really cool, and I think that the fact that they balanced that having that structure with having such a whimsically written script, I think is very very cool and gives it a kind of charm that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And like I still think like the twist and everything kind of has that like childlike charm where I think when you're a kid it makes total sense that the bad guy would accidentally draw herself as an alien, and like that's how you find out.
That's a good point.
Whereas an adult you're like, no alien, no, like no villain would be that fucking stupid. Um but like it's definitely one of those things where you kind of put yourself in the mind of being a kid again, and you watch that movie and you're like, this is what I would have thought of, and what I would have enjoyed.
And
And like
sometimes what I still enjoyed, like some of the
I
jokes
don't
were
know.
dumb as hell, but some of them were good. Guppy, this tiny child beating people up with these like goggle glasses, was hilarious. I'm looking at a picture of her now, and it's the funniest thing I've ever
I
seen.
was a big fan.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
send you
so
this
like
picture.
another thing another thing that I think about a lot is that like a lot of I think the kids movie as a genre is kind of dying. Um, I think it still can exist in like, um, what is it like, uh, pay per view, like direct to pay per view stuff
Yeah,
that's animated and like whatever. But you know, like there hasn't been a Despicable Me movie in a while, which is like, well, on the one hand, I'm counting my blessings, but on the other hand, I thought that was kind of like the last franchise that was like very for kids. Whereas like with Disney, and I mean Disney's almost always done this. Disney tries to make movies that can be enjoyed both as a kid and
yeah,
as an adult. Um, and I think all of the most recent Disney movies have really knocked that out of the park. Um, Even to the point where I'll say like, from what I have seen and heard of Frozen 2, like I don't think it's a kids movie, strictly. Because like, sure, you have like all these cool powers and everything, and those are gonna appeal to the kids, but like it very much has kind of the serious plot progression and everything like that. And I mean, even so far, we watched Princess and the Frog recently, and that movie is like, sure, it appeals to kids because you frogs, haha, but like it's pretty heavy like watching it as an adult. Um
for sure.
so I felt like, you know, kids movies that were really kind of designed for kids have been dying out. Like, you wouldn't get another kind of Meet the Robinsons movie nowadays, or and I think Sharkboy and Lavagirl would hard to be do nowadays if it weren't for We Can Be Heroes. And so, as much as people want to be like, oh, I watch all this high art, like sometimes I just want to watch a kids movie. Um,
For sure.
and
Real quick, you mentioned
I
Frozen 2,
like
and it just reminded me that I need to
uh,
proselytize Jenny Nicholson's alternate Frozen 2 video where she describes a much better version of Frozen 2. That is,
it's
it's
so
not.
good.
It's not like a video where she's like,
I
these were the wrong things. It's her like sitting down, like telling you a fucking story, and at the end of that, you're like, whoa, I love that. Or at least that's what I was like. But yeah, definitely check out that video, listeners, if you don't know. Even if you haven't seen Frozen 2, just Jenny Nicholson's like plot of Frozen 2 that was not the actual plot of Frozen 2, it was just one she made up, is just so good. It's so good. Okay, sorry, back to the show.
um oh yeah, well, so another thing to kind of like tie into my point is that Finn and I, well, we did an episode on it, but we are still, well, Finn, you finished Code Lyoko, right?
I finished Code Lyoko in the part.
Finn, oh no.
That means you never followed through on your threat to finish it before me. Fantastic.
I Yes, that is true.
Were you hoping that
Um,
I was?
so I have been speed running. No, I just like wasn't sure.
Okay.
So to go on my walking tangent, uh, Finn finished Code Lyoko, and then I kind of picked it up back again. And the reason I was taking a hiatus is because I was fucking speed running One Piece. Where I went from chapter 1 to chapter 999 in the span of like 2 weeks. So I could be caught up before chapter 1,000 dropped. Um, which destroyed my sleep schedule. But back to Code Lyoko and what this means for We Can Be Heroes. Code Lyoko is like a kid show. Like, well, the first part of it is. I know it gets more serious in later seasons, but like, you just turn your brain off and you're like, this is what I would think as a kid. And they make all
Yeah.
these like quippy jokes that don't really land, but like, you, like, when I watch it, I know for a fact, like I hear a joke and I'm like, young me would have laughed at that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very different post season one because they changed
and
studios,
so
so it's like a
I
whole different
think,
team.
yeah, um, so yeah, I think like a lot of kids material is becoming both more mature and more immature. So like, you know, Sharkboy and Lavagirl like have snot jokes. Um, but I feel like watching like what is it? Is it Illumination that does Despicable Me
That
and the
sounds right.
Minions? I think it is. Like whenever I watch one of their movies, I I'm just inundated with fart jokes and like very base humor,
I don't even
and
know.
there isn't like
Did I like that as a
kind
kid?
of
Does
the
anyone like? Did you like that as a kid?
I don't like I don't think so, but
I don't think
that's
so
also me
either.
like hoping I wasn't fucking cringe as a kid.
I mean,
Um
very
the
likely
big
all of
thing
us
for
were
me is
cringe.
like
Very likely we are still cringe.
I so my thing is like 30-year-old me is going to be like, wow, 22-year-old Joe Brown uses the word cringe. That's kind of cringe.
Oh shit!
Um
And then this happens every 10
but
years until you die.
so the big thing for me is like I think kids movies have lost a lot of whimsy is the best way to phrase it, cuz like when so a very good example of a kids movie that I think balances being a kids movie well with also like having some heavy themes is the Never Ending Story, which is
Good
one of
God,
the
I
few
forgot that was a
movies that
kids
makes me
movie.
cry.
That's a
Yeah,
like.
which first of all,
I don't have any ending
it's
to
one of
that.
those things that you go into Neverending Story as a kid, and you're like, oh, it's so magical, and like this kid's reading us, from the storybook, but it's actually happening, and you have like Falcor, the Luck Dragon, and like everything looks so cool. And then as an adult, you're like, oh my god, like his horse dies in a swamp due to depression. Um, what an uh, not awful, but like what a traumatizing thing. But like as a kid, you don't realize that. You're just like, oh, that's so sad. But like, look at this magical adventure.
And
And
you
so I
also
think like
have you also have movies like The Last Mimsy that have whimsy to rhyme it, and are more like don't have super
yeah,
heavy things, but still have like deeper themes, or not deeper themes, but like deeper plot lines going on. Like Last Mimsy is a story about the apocalypse, like, but it's told from kids' perspectives, and they get very little kind of glimpse into that. And it ends up like more of a kind of
yeah,
simple kids movie.
yeah. Which is like, I think that's the kind of thing that is a dying art form, is having a kids movie that is focused on like just kind of the sheer imagination of it all, and the spectacle, and like the notions that you have as a kid, rather than like
There's
fart jokes
yeah,
and also like sex jokes for the parents.
I've got a very
Um,
brief anecdote about this, which is I was watching
okay,
some Patricia Jackson video, but it was like a Patreon Q&A video or something. It wasn't like a essay or anything. And she was talking about if she had infinite resources, what movie she would make. And
okay,
she was saying, I'll describe the plot very briefly because she takes like 10 minutes to describe it. Um, but it starts off with like a girl in a very small like fantasy village, and she has to like run around and do tasks, and she's like growing a beet farm or something. And it's about her trying to, like, the first part of this movie is about her trying to like get the ingredients, or not the ingredients for beets, holy shit, like the farming equipment, and like raise money for it and do that kind of stuff and help around town. And then like maybe half an hour in, she gets kind of sent off on this much larger quest that involves like leaving the village, leaving the town, and going off on this very, very long walk into the kind of wilderness. And as she goes on this walk, and this walk takes like maybe like several hours in the movie, like 4 hours or 5 hours or something. Like, so this is a crazy long movie, and it wouldn't be designed for theaters. It would be designed for like internet or something. But as she takes this walk, and like she goes out and like she meets people, like some elder or something. But as she goes on the walk, there's less and less dialogue, and there's more and more music, and that landscape becomes kind of more and more abstract until she's like in this huge field, and she finds a like a park bench, and she sits down on it, and the movie ends. And initially you're thinking like, what the hell, like why? But because the all the advertisements for this movie would only be this first half with the beats, or not first half, but first like half hour with the beats.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you're like sitting there and you're like, when is this movie going to end? Like, this is not what I signed up for. But what Patricia wanted to capture in this was the feeling that you have when you're watching a movie as a kid of it being so long and you don't know when it's going to end. She was thinking like, when is the last time you watched a movie and not known exactly how much time is left, or like where the plot structure is going? So she wants to make something in this fantasy world where she has a ton of money and animators and stuff, like that would give adults that experience that kids have of going into a movie and legitimately not knowing what they're going to see, and entering this kind of fantasy world, but not fantasy world in like the traditional sense, but like fantasy world in the sense like you really don't know, like it defies your expectations in a way, and it also mainly is super long. And I thought that was a really cool idea. I don't know if I'd see the movie, but I think it's an interesting observation that as kids, movies seem like much bigger things, and as adults, they seem like small things. Like, you would watch a movie like in a month and be like, wow, that was so cool. But now it's like, all right, are we watching a movie today? You know? And so I think that would be a cool idea to capture that back. And back to our actual topic, I think that this movie, We Can Be Heroes, captured back that whimsy in a fun way.
I definitely think that, like, so to talk about like not knowing when the movie was going to end, I feel like this movie kind of captured that well, in that it felt like it could have had more at the end, but simultaneously it felt like a lot of the plot beats could just like lead right into the conclusion, um and just like leave something else for a sequel or whatever. So I felt like, I mean, first of all, going in, I didn't know what to expect, like what the plot would be, who the characters would be, how long it would be, stuff like that. And I think, I wasn't positive of like anything until the very end scene where all the kids are like posing on.
Yeah, that's a good
I was
point.
like, oh, okay, like it actually is done.
We legitimately didn't know like if the twist was gonna be the twist or not. And there were two twists, right? There was that the people in the hero agency were actually aliens, and then the second twist was that the aliens were actually there to help out the humans, which is like a fucking cool twist. Yeah. That second one especially. Like, you don't see that in most alien movies, that they're actually good. It's a very like childish thought to have, in a good way.
Yeah. And the other thing, like, about just kind of the imagination and stuff behind these kids' movies is, I think it's really interesting, because I think a lot of the movies that people feel nostalgic for really have this. So, like, The Iron Giant is one of the movies I think, like, the people of our generation are either like really nostalgic for or have never seen.
I'm in the second group.
But a lot of it, you have to see it. It's so, well, I love it a lot. And I think the reason I love it a lot and am so nostalgic for it is because it was, that kid movie where this kid just finds a random robot that's giant, yeah, and of course made of iron, as the title would imply.
That's like, it's just like, that sounds like just fucking good
he
shit.
just like, Yeah, but like he makes friends with it and like he has to hide it and as an adult you're like fucking tell the government like or don't mess with that because it might explode or that might not be safe. But as a kid you're like I want an iron robot friend. And like what if the government takes him away? I can't trust them. Like he's my friend.
Yeah.
Um
I
and you know Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is another really good example. And I mean, part of that is Dahl is an excellent writer, and I love almost all of his work. Um, but like, just the idea that there could be an entire room where everything is edible, and you don't, as an adult, you don't go, well, how do you get stains out? And like, what, when it start to smell bad? And like, what about all these different tastes and bleeding over and the temperatures? But like, as a kid, you're like, fuck yeah, I can eat everything here. And that makes total sense. Like, the big wizard man said it, therefore, I can do it.
I think this is a case for like reclaiming whimsy in adult movies. There's someone on Twitter noticed that there's a pattern that anytime you have something that doesn't make sense in a movie, so many people on the internet are just like attacking it, like just like saying, "Oh, that it's nonsense. This was an era."
Stop
yeah, yeah. But like you can accept some amount of whimsy. Like you can allow yourself to accept some amount of whimsy, some amount of illogic in movies because it's a movie. Like there's no reason why things have to make sense. It's art. It's like you get whatever you get out of it, and there's no necessity for this hyper realism that a lot of people seem to demand. And it's something someone else I think was pointing out about the fact that almost all kind of modern adult movies nowadays, in order to put symbolism into it, instead of having just symbolic imagery, they'll have an explicit dream sequence. And whoever this was pointing it out was saying, why not just have this as symbolic imagery? It gives you a lot more options. And I think that's a cool idea.
And I think one of the really interesting things about that is the modern remaking of it's not A Swiftly Tilting Planet. That's the sequel. Oh my God, why can't I think about this? The name of this.
Could you describe it?
Wallace. What is his? Hold on.
Charles
I know
Wallace.
how to find it.
Wrinkle in Time.
A Wrinkle in Time. I don't know why I can never think of the first name, A Wrinkle in Time, but I can always think of A Swiftly Tilting Planet.
Oops, sorry, I just noticed I accidentally paused the recording for 1 second. So, listeners, that was not you. That was me. Apologies.
Uh-oh.
Just for a second. I shouldn't even have mentioned it. The flow would have been better.
The modern remake of A Wrinkle in Time. Did you see it?
I must have. 1 sec, let me look it up. A Wrinkle in Time, 2018. I must not have.
God.
I definitely.
A lot of
might have. I don't know. Maybe.
So, a lot of the criticism I heard of it was that like, oh, it's a nonsense plot and it doesn't make sense why they can do these things, and like they just do whatever. And I'm like, I promise you, that's the point. Like, it is a children's book, and it's just like, I want to do a bunch of cool things. Like, it doesn't matter why the Tesseract works the way it does.
Yeah,
like, it just. It do.
And this isn't to say that you can't enjoy movies for realism and be disappointed when something you were hoping would have realism doesn't have realism. Like, that's definitely a valid kind of way to go into a movie as well. I was going to give an example, but I can't think of any.
But like, I just think that like, I think this is why I really love La La Land.
Yeah, that's a great.
Because
That's such a good example of having metaphorical imagery without a dream sequence.
like in La La Land, like are they dancing in the street? No, because like they're like the the way that everything looks changes, and these people obviously like aren't dancing in a traffic jam, but like it's a musical, and that like that's what people do in musicals, and also just like instead of having um having only like a dream sequence or something, you just have like, oh, these vibrant colors mean this now. And like sure, there's a pretty notable dream sequence in La La Land. Well, there is a sequence that is dreamlike in it. But like I just plop it in and I look at it and it makes me feel like a kid again.
Yeah.
Um, and I think deep down, um, that is what I look for in at least some movies.
Yes.
And I like that was the thing too, is I went into La La Land, hearing that it was, pretty good and that it was a musical. Um, and I was like, okay, I don't like, I have this expectation or this expectation going in, and I sat down, and I can vividly remember this, and I watched the very opening of it, and I said to myself, oh my God, this is going to be so good. And it was, I mean, I could write an entire thesis on why I love this movie. Um, but like, it's just one of those things that like, I have never once gone, well, why did they have that dream sequence? Or like, why did they have that secret or sequence at the planetarium? Like, they weren't really flying. Like, what was the point of that? I sit down and I go, this makes me feel a certain way,
Yeah.
and that's all the reason I need to like enjoy it.
D-
Um,
Realizing that like I can
man,
allow
that got
myself to.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to kind of go with the point that you're making, was like realizing I can just enjoy something is
Yeah,
like freeing.
it's led me to retroactively enjoy movies, which is wild. There's a movie called Starfish, which I think I mentioned on the podcast a long time ago, that makes no fucking sense at all. And thinking back on it, like as I was watching the movie, I was like, this makes no fucking sense at all. But now, like thinking back on it, I'm like, damn, I loved the imagery that was there and the acting and the visuals and the concept and the music and like every scene. I'm like, damn, I loved that movie. But while I was watching it, there was just this constant in my head voice that didn't need to be there, that was like, bad, it's bad because it makes no fucking sense. Like that's a hindrance. That's not a help when you're watching movies.
Yeah. Um, but I think that there are some people trying to recreate that. So like um Over the Garden Wall has I mean is pure whimsy.
Yeah.
Like there is no rhyme or reason to it, and that makes it all the better. Um and Infinity Train, at least the first season of it, we have to watch the other seasons. I'm
Yeah,
dying to see them.
for sure.
Um like it's sure there is this kind of grand mystery of what's going on, but like in the moment, you like my favorite part of Infinity Train is they go to a sovereign land of corgis. And I love corgis. So already I'm hooked. But like they don't really question why the corgis can talk, or like how there is a sovereign nation inside this train. They're just like, weird, I gotta get to the next train car.
I think something
Um
that that like
so
filmmakers
I don't know.
or people who make stories kind of confuse is wonder with desire to actually know the truth. Like when I see the corgi car in Infinity Train, I'm like, whoa, why are there corgis here? Like, how does the train work to fit this whole land inside of it? But like, and I understand that the people who are writing it, and this isn't something I think they do bad at all, but people who write stories where you ask questions like that see that people are asking questions and go, oh, we want to promote this. But the way of promoting it, of not just having it, but also actually answering it, I think is kind of appealing to the wrong thing. Like, wonder is something that disappears once you know the answer. So, like, desiring to know the answer has its own reward. You don't need the answer there to enjoy the desire of seeking it, you know? Heck, is that a justification for unsolvable science stuff? Maybe.
So, well, this is something I like kind of struggle with too, because like, so I was having a discussion with Chris and Cody about something in One Piece, and like what it is pretty irrelevant. But I was like, man, I wonder why this is the case. And it was the argument came down to like, would you actually be happier having that be addressed, like, you know, like kind of the, you know, Oda, the mangaka, the manga writer, turns to the camera and is like, this is what this character is, and this is how they're this powerful and everything. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't, because like part of the great thing about that is like, you know, I sit in front of my computer and I read this chapter and I go, yep, sure. That like I just go with it. And I don't like, you know, and this isn't like a defense of you know, you can't say this for everything. So like I think movies with like very nonsensical plot, or just like The Room, where things happen kind of for no reason.
Yeah,
like,
or movies that
I could not,
that have like such a level of metaphorical imagery, but kind of like think they're so smart for having it. Or like, ooh, did you notice all this magical imagery? What does it really mean? Like Life of Pi, you know? Like, that's also not great.
Oh my god. Life of Pi is something that is like seared into my brain, but in the sense that like I never consciously think about it, but someone brings it up and I'm like suddenly flooded with how much I hate that movie. Um yeah, but like, so, you know, like with all things on this podcast, take it with a grain of salt, and it's not like applicable everywhere. But sometimes I'm just like, I wanna read something and look at it and be like, damn, that's cool. And
Yeah.
you know, you can certainly there are people out there who have spent hundreds of hours of hypothesizing as to how this or that happened, or like, you know, I mean, the lore of Lord of the Rings is, and like the way things work and the history of that entire, you know, universe is so advanced. But like, you don't have to get into it. It's there if you want it.
And we're not saying it's a bad idea to get into it,
and
or that the authors answer it, but it's cool that they have a story that makes sense and works and is enjoyable without the need to.
Yeah, because like one of my big projects is for Pokemon, and just being like, I want to write notes on stuff. And actually, one of the Christmas presents I bought for myself is like um an anatomy book for Pokemon that was fan made, and has beautiful illustrations. And like, you can seek out that stuff and be like, man, I like love this, and do wonderful deep dives. But I think that deep dives being mandatory for a story is like not the case.
I'm glad that we're still doing this podcast after we like largely ran out of ideas, because like I feel like it's actually like helping me think about this stuff, and it's getting me excited about media and stories, and it's like it's cool that we're still doing this, I think. For a moment of sincerity.
Well, and that's
and cringe.
Well, One of the things kind of pulling back the curtain on this is that very early on I like tried to go into an episode with like kind of my thesis. Um and then I started winging it just because um it's hard to do back when we were doing this weekly to have a thesis always ready, and I started winging it, and I found that by doing stream of conscious and having like my general ideas, but letting the conversation kind of ebb and flow, it got me to discussions I enjoyed having a lot more.
Yeah, because it's like you're
Um,
really having a
so like
conversation if you don't know what you're going to say entirely beforehand, which is something I had to learn for sure.
yeah, because like sure, you can write video essays on why X character is Y archetype and what that says. And like they can be interesting, but for this kind of show, especially with the kind of people we are, I think it's a lot more interesting to be like, oh well, what do you think about this? And you know, I think coming in with the statement like if we had come in with the statement We Can Be Heroes is a good movie because it's whimsical, first of all I would have like not been able to come up with that thesis just like sitting down and going, why did I like that, and trying to put pen to paper. And secondly, I think that like when you come in with a thesis statement, that's really all you come to the table with
Yeah.
sometimes is that argument. Whereas with this stuff, where it's like, what did you think about it? You have a lot more branching paths.
And I find also still pulling back the curtain for
Um,
a second, holding the curtain back to let the words go through. Um, I find that, like, I have a real tendency to want to plan, and I know this with D&D as well, because I'm not good at improv. I'm not good at thinking on the spot. I couldn't come up with the name. Heck, I was trying to come up with the name of a city for an entire day yesterday, and I couldn't do it. Um, and see, like now I've lost my train of thought, for instance. But I think you can have. Okay, so to continue pulling back the curtain, I drove for 7 hours today. And I did not think about We Can Be Heroes at all during that
Oof.
drive. I thought about the road and a podcast I was listening to called Within the Wires. Season 5 just ended. It's so good. Everyone has to listen to it. I cried so many times in the car for 7 hours. But I got back. I ate 2 fucking gigantic burritos and I got on the call. No thoughts in my mind. And like, and it's like 8:40 right now. I think that, what was my point? Shit, I had some good point.
Uh-oh. Well,
I think coming
to
into conversations in
kind
this
of
kind of natural way where you're not going out to like you've thought about it enough that you can say something about it. And for us that was watching the movie, because there's I don't know how much there is to think about besides watching the movie and what we've already. Well, oh yeah, okay. So we watched the movie, and that was the source material, and that was enough in our brains already. And then we come into this, me entirely empty-headed. And I think that that's how you can really get like a good conversation going, not to pat ourselves on the back too much.
well, one of the things for me is like, um, so I was home alone for a fair bit today, um, and a lot of that was just cuddling with my dog. Um, but then like right before this call, we took down our Christmas tree. Um, and so I was focused on like getting ornaments off and moving the tree and everything like that. Um, and so I'm I'm usually like a head empty himbo type person. Um, and so my only thought of the podcast today was like, I have to do the podcast today, not like, oh, I want to make these points.
Yeah, same.
And I think it's a better way to come into a conversation. It's you know what is really good is So whenever you're really passionate about something and you just ramble on about why you love it, um, you're not talking about like you're not making a point that this game is revolutionary or that this music or music artist like is uses music in a new way or harkens back to something. You can talk about that,
You're
but like
not
you're usually not making a point.
you're not
You
writing
just
an
want to
essay.
share something with someone.
Yeah, it's a form of self expression.
Yeah,
You say
like
I'm the kind of person who enjoys this, and I hope that I can share this bit of myself by sharing this enjoyment with you.
yeah. And that's why I think like kind of off the cuff stuff like this works, because if if I wrote an essay on, to go back to me loving La La Land, if I wrote an essay on it, which I could do, um I think it would be, fine work, because I would be able to like revise it and be like, okay, do I really love this about this, what does this say? But when you're just talking with someone, you don't like, you don't get into the nitty gritty because it proves a point. You get into it because you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so like that's one thing that I think uh I like about us making this podcast. Um, and what I liked about when we were doing, kind of the fake plot of the podcast
Yeah.
and everything, that we had like kind of a funny idea, and then like maybe 5 minutes before we start recording, it's like, all right, let's get our story straight. Like, what's the plot for
Yeah,
today?
yeah. I'm
Um,
glad we didn't like sit
and,
down
and
and
it
write it
wasn't
out.
like painstaking research on like,
Oh, that was my point about the car, is that
yeah,
I was exhausted and busy for so
because it
long that
gave
I
us a
didn't
lot
have
of,
time to gather my thoughts enough to like form an essay. It was closer to the state that you're in when you're just talking about something you enjoy with your friends. There's no prep, it just is something that comes up. And you can't always replicate that with the podcast, right? Because we're recording at some set time, well, plus or minus. But like, I think that kind of just removing thoughts from your brain beforehand can be helpful in simulating that more natural environment that is what we tried to get originally when we started. Did that make sense? I might have
yeah,
said things a
because
little
like
out of
I
order.
think the goal of this pod, I understand what you mean. Like the goal of this podcast, I don't think originally was what I'm about to say, but I think has become uh this thing of replicating those discussions that you and me and Sean and Chris and everyone have when it's 2 a.m. and we can't sleep and maybe we're tipsy, or maybe we're really emotional because we have a final, or maybe we just saw a movie that we were like crazy about. But it's about this feeling of a couple of friends, or more friends, just having a really laid back discussion and just thinking about it
So
instead of like immediately having to have a stance to
yeah,
defend.
yeah, I think it's fine to come in with this stance, but only if you've come to that stance because you're passionate about it and you're passionate about what that stance means. Not, oh, I got to think up something for the podcast. Let me write down my like thesis, my 5 paragraph essay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that that's something I've just noticed. I've just realized now is I think it's fine to come in with whatever amount of knowledge as long as it's something, and it's fine to come in with a 5 paragraph essay if that's what you naturally would have, if I would have written it anyway. you know but without the podcast.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Think I do my own personal level of research for the podcast of like what I genuinely want to do. Like I don't go into the podcast having read a book for like a day just to be like, oh, I've read the teacher recommended reading. If I want to read a book for the podcast, I'll read a book for the podcast. And if I like want to read snippets, I'll do that. Or if I want to listen to music, I'll do that. But like for me, I think the only preparation for the podcast I need is I need a starting point and I need someone else to talk to. And that's about it.
Yeah. And this is why I think I think we should wrap up pretty soon. But this is why I think our like episode ideas doc has gotten so little love, is because like if we don't like if we're not passionate about like we're passionate about those things when we write them in the list, not like on any given Friday night, you know. Like I think it's good at things like if we have no idea at all and we want to go to it, but like it's not like a list that we should follow one by one. I think it's fine to just be like, all right, what are we doing this time? And then we do it.
And I think one of the great things about that is that it lets us react a lot faster to like things that we see or experience. Because like if we were following the doc to a T, we would have thrown We Can Be Heroes on it and then gotten around to it like a month later when it wasn't fresh in our minds. But now, I mean, it's a couple of weeks since we've seen it, but it's left enough of a lasting impression on me and hopefully on Finn that we can speak at least somewhat authoritatively on it, and I don't have to like stew on it for a bit.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing is like I'm one of those people that like I think of an argument like 10 days before I think I'm gonna have it, so I know all my options and like what to say and how to feel. And if I did that for the podcast, I'd hate it. Like, because like I was saying, like the argument, like if you're having an argument, it's about winning. But if you're having and I mean, it really shouldn't be. It should be about like coming to an agreement. But what can you do? But like to just have a discussion and shoot the breeze is about like kind of like I think it's what argument should be, where it's getting to like a truth, not like the truth in capital letters, but just like something you think is true.
Yeah. I think we should start wrapping up, but I have two things. Right. One, I want to heavily recommend
All right. Hit me with these two things.
Podcast. I don't know if this is a podcast for this podcast. Like, I don't know if I'm recommending this to you. I mean, I am recommending it to you, but I don't expect you to listen to it. This is more a general recommendation. Within the Wire Season 5. It works as a standalone. It is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, kind of. I'll be super brief because this is not at all relevant to the topic of the episode. But it is relevant to like things you're passionate about in the moment, because I listened to this entirely in the last 2 days and finished it. It is a love story between a theater director and a play director, I guess is the word, stage director, whatever, and a government spy. And it is told in voicemails in reverse chronological order, from like years after their breakup to the night that they meet. And just the music is fantastic. The voice acting is so good. It's like so good. And it's just like an incredibly beautiful story that like it's like people say this about all sorts of things, but like coming away from this, I feel like I know more about human nature and I feel more seen as a person. I cried 3 times in the car listening to this in the 7-hour car trip. It's in total, it's a little over 3 hours long. I like, if you like things that are good, this is a good thing. That's all I'll say about that. My second thing
Mood
is, I think to finish off this episode that is definitely entirely 100% focused and about we can be heroes, which of the kids had the best superpower?
Oh fuck. I mean, like, all right. Here's the tier list of ranking it. Absolute P brain is oh my god, the main girl, and she doesn't have a power, but
Sure.
the like her power is leadership and like shit like that. Absolute P brain.
Yeah,
And then
for sure.
like, roughly like normal brain is wild card. Is that what his name was, where he
Yep.
can just like choose a power? And then absolutely gigantic brain is Guppy, because
Yes.
I can control water and punch it really hard.
She's my S tier
And
for
like,
sure.
you, you might be going, Joe, what the fuck are you talking about? That's an ape brain take. Like, wouldn't it be smarter to choose? No, like her aesthetic, and like it circles back to whimsy, baby.
Like they have this whole
Sure,
scene
it
explaining.
might be smarter to take something else.
Yeah, they have this whole scene like explaining like not the holy shit
Intricacies?
Yeah, I know the word. I'm stuttering. One sec. Intricacies of all of the kids' superpowers, and like there's ones that involve time travel and stuff, and it's all like not actually complicated, but like you think for a second, oh, I'm gonna have to think about this, and they get to Guffy, and she's like fucking like throwing adults on the ground. She's got shark strength. Like that's just so fucking good. It's just like simple and funny. I guess she also has the
Oh,
water stuff, which is a little more complicated, but just the shark strength is so good.
um, also in A tier is acapella, just because I really love how like
Yeah,
like
it's
how loose they are
it's
with
kind
like
of really
your
dumb.
singing as your power.
I just like that she had to
It's
constantly go
absolutely like
"Ooh" to
it,
fly the bus or whatever. That's whimsy.
yeah. I once again, my ape brain will always pick what is funny over what is practical.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah. All right. I started it. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna do the plugs.
do it.
Um, fuck. Leave us a rating and review on the podcast app or the iTunes or however it works. We have a subreddit at r/fools and fiction, where you can like comment and leave suggestions and stuff like that. Um, that's two down. Listen to the much more talented people on the William and Mary Podcasting Network at spreaker.com/user/pnwm. Send us email at foolsandfiction@gmail.com. What's our spam situation looking like on that?
We're pretty good.
All right, sweet. Yeah, I did not want to have to make a new Gmail account to like hide from the
Yeah, it
spam.
just stopped somehow
But
miraculously.
if you personally know us, shoot us an email or text or whatever saying you have a podcast idea and want to do it. We are more than happy to have guests on. And
For sure.
I think that's it.
Yep, I'm pretty sure that's it.
With that, all right. I'm big fucking hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet, and it is almost 9.
Eat.
I mean, this was a wonderful conversation to have, but also, yeah, I want
You are
food. So,
released.
hold on. Let me do the tradition. Goodbye. Please, for the love of God, turn the podcast off.